Leslie and I have known each other since early childhood. We grew up on the same country road in Mississippi.
I think why we're good for the community of Mississippi is because we're a product of this community. We are just two country guys, and we were embedded with what I call the diamonds of good character.
Come, join the family, and help us build the community.
Charles, another Friday, another episode of the Urban Law Show. I am back in the saddle once again with my man, my brother. What's up, Charles?
What's going on, Leslie?
Man, let me tell you, I'm excited for the day. You know, I've been breathing this all week. I've been hearing from our listeners, even some that can't make it to the show, gonna watch it later. They have watched Inequality for All. And that is the topic of discussion today. So I'm excited, man. I'm geeked.
I see. It's a rainy day in Mississippi right now. The elevator is down and it's raining. So
again,
interesting times this afternoon. I think they're doing some routine maintenance.
You know, before we get into what we're going to be dealing with today, I want to carve out your social justice moment, and I think it would be remiss of us if we didn't kind of address kind of what's going on in some form or fashion. So I am going to turn it over to you at this time, your social justice moment, and the floor is yours. The good doctor, the attorney.
I appreciate that, Leslie. Here's what I want to say to everyone who's listening and everyone who may go back and play this. I want to look at this from two different angles. Why are we here? And what do we do next? Our last 3 or 4 episodes have kind of led up to this. And Leslie is going to be talking about inequality for all as we go through the episode today. So why are we here? Inequity, inequality, misapplication of justice, and the death of Black men and women around the United States. Let that sink in. Not arrest, an extreme rush to justice. So we find ourselves at a flashpoint, coming off the heels of COVID, which we're still not out of the woods on. We find ourselves digesting yet another useless murder by the police. And so, you know, I've been involved in civil rights pretty much all my life. And I've been slow to discuss this on the show because I'm more of an action-oriented person. But I feel compelled at this point to look at it from those lenses. Why are we here? We know the history of slavery. We know the history of inequality from a financial standpoint, institutional standpoint, whether it's the NFL, whether it's the boardroom, whether it's local, state, or federal municipalities. Black people are tax-paying citizens and should be allowed and have earned the right to be treated as full citizens of the United States of America. So that's why we find ourselves here. The great Fannie Lou Hamer said, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired."
Yes, she did.
That's why we find ourselves here. I had an interesting discussion with my mother, and I didn't tell her I was going to talk about this, but I wanted to get her sage wisdom on her viewpoint because her generation sees these things vastly different than our generation and the generations after us. In accounting for that, what I would say to everyone listening is we all have a voice. The problem becomes civil unrest is a reaction to those voices not being heard. When you've done it every other way, this is the end result. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. It's going to be the same outcome if we continue down the same path. Does that mean urban law is advocating for protests? No. But what we are advocating for is people decide to exercise their First Amendment right to protest, that they be allowed to voice those grievances. There is no way in the United States of America, in the great state of Mississippi, or anywhere else in this great union, that the police should declare war on its citizenry. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So here's what I would say. Now that we've addressed the why, the next is the how. And as we try to do every week, every episode, we look at things a little bit differently here. Not only do we want to look at what we're seeing on the television and in the newspapers, we want to look around us and grab some context. Now, do you really believe, Leslie, that those people who are out there to voice grievances, that all of them are starting the violence?
Absolutely not. I absolutely don't believe that. And I have seen in instances where that is absolutely not the case.
With that in mind, I want people to understand that there are larger forces around you that are taking advantage of the moment. It's political season. So always be mindful that any opportunity to make a protest, which is otherwise peaceful, look very negative, is to start violence. Is that the case 100% of the time? No. I'm not quite sure, Leslie, why zoo animals have been included in the protest.
Yeah, what value are they going to add to the protests? I was just couldn't wrap my head around that one.
So, in saying that, I believe the people have a right to voice their grievances. But here's where I want to see this discussion go. We know why we are protesting, but how do we get systematic change? There are any number of groups of individuals who have come together to voice their utter displeasure and lack of belief in the systems that are in place to protect us. And I know for a fact that over 60 of them have come together and put together lists of demands, which range from defunding the police to investing more into the infrastructure of the Black community. The House should be building upon those demands and not taking no for an answer on those demands, because policy drives the politics.
You know, I think that's a great lead in into the question of why. So before we do that, just to get everybody, Joyce, welcome aboard. Thanks for coming in. To get everybody to understand what we're going to dive in today, and I'm not going to be able to do a total deep dive. I'm going to hit a couple points that I really want us to really look at and understand what's really happening when we talk about inequality. So this was the assignment that I gave everyone last week. I'm going to play a little bit to give you an overview of what we're going to take a dive into today. So just hang on, enjoy this video, and then we're going to come back and break this down as it relates to particularly African Americans and this inequality gap. So hang tight, enjoy.
the thing you ought to know about this Mini Cooper is it is small. We are in proportion, me and my car. My name is Robert Reich. I was Secretary of Labor under Bill Clinton. Before that, the Carter administration. Before that, I was a special aide to Abraham Lincoln. Of all developed nations, the United States has the most unequal distribution of income, and we're surging toward even greater inequality. 1928 and 2007 become the peak years for income concentration. It looks like a suspension bridge.
Last year, we made $36,000.
I probably make $50,000 a year, working 70 hours a week.
The middle class is struggling. People occasionally say to me, what nation does it better? The answer is the United States. In the decades after World War II, the economy boomed, but you had very low inequality.
Do you know Robert Reich? I do indeed. He's a communist.
When I was a kid, bigger boys would pick on me. I think it changed my life. I had to protect people from the people who would beat them up economically. Who is actually looking out for the American worker? The answer is nobody. If workers don't have power, if they don't have a voice, their wages and benefits start eroding. We are losing equal opportunity in America. Any one of you who feels cynical, just consider where we have been.
There you have it. Wow, that's a lot. That's action-packed, Charles. Let's jump right into it. I got, 3 questions that I pondered when I looked at this. So let me just put them up here. What is happening in terms of the distribution of income and wealth?
You could do a whole show on that.
I know. And we probably will end up doing a series and probably have a panel discussion at some point. But part 2 is why. And part 3 is that a problem? Because for some people, it's not a problem. And I really believe for the top 1%, they don't view this as a problem.
Well, before you go further, what is the top 1%? I've heard that term before, but what is that?
I knew you would ask that, Charles. And because a lot of people don't understand what the top 1% is. So before I even get into the top 1%, I'm gonna work my way to that. I just want to share with you a couple things I want you to notice. So even as in, let me see if I can blow that up a little bit here. Yeah. So even in 1978, just to give you an idea, the typical male worker made $48,302. The typical annual income of the top 1% in 1978 was $393,682. That's the combined income, typical income, top 1%.
That's a huge gap.
That wasn't that long ago, Charles. That was after you were born.
1978, I think you could get a cheeseburger from McDonald's for about 25 cents.
You could. Now, watch this. Let me show you the difference here. So in 2010, the top 1%.
Boy, that's almost off the screen.
Yeah. The top 1% income rose to $1,101,089, while the typical male worker's income plummeted to $33,751. So from 1978 to 2010, you see what the wealth gap did. So you wonder, like, wait just 1 minute. So in 1978, and so for you guys that don't understand who we're talking about, who was in the workforce. So in 1978, the baby boomers were in the workforce. They were where Generation X is today. Now, if I'm not going, some of y'all don't like me to break that down. Look up your generations. You'll know where you fall. But for me, the baby boomers, that's my mother, that's my father, that's, you know who I'm talking to. In 1978, in the prime of your income earning years, the average salary for a male worker was $48,000. In 2010, just the flip. Now the generations have flipped. So in 2010, Now Generation X is actually in the workforce.
That's
The
right.
median salary is $33,000, almost $15,000 less, while the top 1% income increased from 300 and almost 80,000 to over $1 million. You think that's bad? Let's take a further look at the wealth gap. Here's the one that blew my mind. The top 400 richest people have more wealth than the bottom 150 million of us put together. Now, Charles, I don't know about you, but when you look at this, 400 people have more wealth than 150 million.
Well,
Let me put it in another perspective, because we have countries that don't have 150 million people.
that's right.
So the top 400 people are richer than countries.
Yeah. That's the size of some Mississippi towns, 400 people.
Yeah. Now, that's that suspension bridge he was talking about. But you asked the question in terms to, I want to go to the top 1%, what that is. So let me just kind of hit that. The top 1%, the bottom tier of the top 1% right now makes about $380,000. That's typically your high wage earner professions, your doctors, your lawyers, your professional CPAs, etc. So,
well, let's just put on the record now. Don't go around telling people I'm making $380,000.
I didn't say that. Notice I said doctors and lawyers. I did not say Charles Irvin. I did not say every law firm. So when it looks at doctors and lawyers, we're talking about your bigger firms, the big partners, with the big shiny buildings, those guys. And It's not the workers, it's the top tier of those. So the partner level, the big partners, so to speak.
Yeah.
So now that's the bottom tier of the 1%. So what is the top tier? So the next tier in that $1 to $3 million range is your entrepreneurs. They're on the higher end of that 1%. And then above that, you will find your CEOs, financial sector, star actors, entertainment, athletes, 10 million plus. So that's what the top 1% is mathematically. That's the numerical breakdown of that. So let's pause there, Charles. I know we have a couple comments here, so we'll hit those. We're gonna pause there, and I'm gonna let you talk about that for a second, because that was a lot there that we just covered. So,
well, I mean, how you want it, Leslie? I can give it to you. And okay, so I'm still on my commentary because I've been feeling a way about these protests and the perceived lack of interest in hearing the grievances. What you see, what Leslie put on the screen, is the financial calculation that goes into not hearing those grievances. A lot of times, so for those of you who don't know, Leslie and I have been friends since 1972, probably. We were born in 1972. But one of the beauties of our friendship is we look at things from different lenses. He's a money guy. They think I'm a bit eclectic. I don't know. But what that brings is we tackle problems from different angles. Leslie is giving you the same social commentary. He's just giving you the financial portion of it, which is stark. You can work 70 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, and be in the bottom 99%.
Yeah.
And not really see a way out based off of the policies, the way the tax code is structured, the way programs are structured. Now, those who are against what Leslie is showing you are going to say that we are in favor of socialism. We are not. All we're doing is showing you the facts. And the fact is, there is not equality in how the income wealth gap has continually spread out over time?
Well, I think not only that, I think this is going to really bring it home. If you're not with me yet, look at this, right? So when you look, and let me just see if I can make this a little bit bigger because I know, all right, so I cleared. But we're going to look at comparisons from the 70s. And again, the 70s would have been the prime years of earnings for the baby boomers, to 2010, which is a generation later where the Generation X is in the workforce. Bank teller, the average bank teller salary in 1970s was $27,920. In 2010, it was $24,100. So what I'm sharing with you, you're making less money today than our parents made back then.
For the same amount of work.
For the same amount of work, if not more work.
Yeah.
If not more work. I mean, let's just be honest, because in the 70s, you still had unions that were very viable. They've taken some hits. So if we look at meat packers, 1970s, 40,000, almost 41,000. Today, $24,190. So when we look at inequality now, those are working, middle class working people. And my biggest question to you, of that income, how much of their paycheck do you think they have to spend in order to live and function, right? Of that, how much do you think they're spending? So let me put it in this perspective. If that salary it was 27,000 in the 70s for a bank teller, it's 24,000 now, and they have to spend that to live, they're probably consuming most of that, and they're probably borrowing some.
Well, not probably. They're operating at a deficit because the cost of living in the 1970s was vastly different than it is in the 2000s.
Absolutely.
So what you're basically saying is people are struggling to meet their monthly needs for their families, even though they are gainfully employed.
That's exactly what I'm saying. And the other thing is, if you look at the top 1%, so even on that tour, you take the top 1%, the high end of that, they make 1,000 times what the average middle class person makes. They don't consume 1,000 times. They don't spend 1,000 times in terms of income. So what do they do with that money? That means that money is being invested into assets and vehicles and tools that build their wealth. So that money is not in circulation. The economy needs money in circulation to keep the inequality consistent and keep the gap from being like this. But if I make 10 million a year and I spend 2 and I'm investing 8 in building my wealth, then look what's happening, right? I'm building that wealth, and I'm gonna compound build that wealth, so that 8 million that I save in 1 year, but I look 5 years down the line, that 8 million has generated me 20, 30 million.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question though, because what I hear you saying is if it's only 400 people and they hoarding all the apples over there, when they talk about stimulus checks and jolts to the economy, that means the other 150 million people are floating the economy. Is that correct?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure.
Now, we got some questions in here. So David, hey David, what's up? David asked the question. He said, what is considered middle class? So this is just a number. So David, this might not be your version of middle class, but here are the facts when we compile the numbers from all of America. So 75,000, right? 50,000, 25. So what they do is take that median income. So the middle class median income is sitting right there at 50,000. So if we look at your household income,
50,000 don't go a long way in 2020.
No, sir. It doesn't. So that's what's viewed as middle class. So David, if you take the example I just gave you, if with the bank teller, if you got two people in a household, they make 50,000, that's probably where you at. If I make 10 million, if I make 20 million, right? So how many times am I making more than you? I don't have to put all of what I've earned and consumed back into living. That means I can put it into tools and investments at a much higher rate to generate. And I'm not saying that every middle class person spends all they consume. What I'm talking about is just the gap and inequality. And so what you've seen systematically since the 70s, and you saw it again in 1928, was that the top 1% income grew phenomenally, while the bottom income fell. So here's what's happening. They start paying CEOs, executives, compensation went up, and average middle class workers' compensation went down for the same job that they were doing in the 70s, but they pay less today than they did in the 70s. And that's what I mean. You won't find a CEO today that makes less today than he made in the 70s. It doesn't exist.
No. But at the same time, they broke the unions, and most of us live in at-will employment states. And so that has a lot to do with these low salaries.
So can you speak to that for a second, Charles? What at will, the change in at will, what it means? Because, we got a lot of people today, they've only lived in an at will time.
Well,
so
once upon a time, and it still exists in certain sectors of American life, but it's becoming a rarity that, you had to be fired for cause. And that's where the unions came in, because the union, not only does the union help you guarantee a healthy wage, they also negotiate things like healthcare, hidden costs. So imagine the middle class family, if you say 50,000 and they have someone who gets ill and they don't have that same union protection in those negotiated healthcare rates. The legal component of that is at will is just what it says. They can fire you just because.
And I think, and we're going to get to the question. So, Cinnamon, the reason why sometimes people don't really understand or see all the compound reasons why the inequality gap gets greater. Let me just bring it home with this and look at higher education particularly. So when we look at higher education, in 1940s, 50s, you can see it steadily rise, right? And then in the 70s, 17%. But look at what happened between the 70s and 80s with higher ed. So I can tell you, I can distinctly remember what my tuition cost when I entered Jackson State in 1990. I remember because at the time I thought it was just this crazy number. But my tuition, we're not talking about room and board, but my tuition for that semester was $895.
Boy, Jackson Carter's tuition for pre-K is more than that.
Exactly. I got recital fees for my daughter that are more than that. So when we look at higher education today, there's a less of an opportunity unless you're in the 1%, unless your child is blessed to receive compensation outside in the form of scholarship, that any kid in middle class or below today can go in college and exit not being in debt.
Which is another hidden cost. I gave you one.
The hidden cost that breaks the inequality gap further.
Right. So now you're giving another one, which is student loan debt.
Yes. So yeah, fire away at your questions. We got a couple questions. Let me stop and get some of these on the screen. And here we can jump into this. So just send your questions on in. Let's see. Ebony says, we do an exercise in Junior League called the Poverty Experience. It is indeed eye-opening because it highlights the difficulties most low and middle income families face. More has to be done to close the gap for sure. The reality, it goes back to this. When you ask how do we close this gap? How do we change the inequality gap? I'm gonna be real honest, and some people don't like when I say it, but I don't know any other way to say it than just to give you the plain truth, just no chaser. And the reality is, we have to be creators of jobs and not just consumers of jobs, because we have no leverage, we have no power if we're not creators of jobs. So here's the scenario. It's kind of like what has happened to our economy due to manufacturing going overseas, and why y'all haven't been able to get Lysol and get the things you need as easily as you probably think you should, is because we only make and manufacture about 20% of the products inside the US anyway.
Yeah,
so that's a whole nother story.
Hold on, Liz. Hold on. Before you go any further, one thing, and this is my lens talking now, one thing that people need to understand and hear, when you hear these politicians talking to you about manufacturing jobs coming back, they are lying to you. I don't care if they have a D behind their name, or R behind their name, or I behind their name. Those jobs are not coming back.
Not coming back. And here's the greatest way to put it. How in the world can you think a manufacturing job of yesterday can come back when today there are robots that's doing that job? They don't have a sick day. They don't have a bereavement day. They don't have a healthcare expense. They don't talk back. No, those jobs are never coming back. The jobs that are coming, the jobs that will exist, is you got to be able to work on that robot, or you got to be able to build that robot. You got to be able to program that robot. But the assembly line will never come back with human beings as you know it.
No.
It won't.
No. So go ahead with your creation, because there are opportunities out there. And I distinctly remember you said it and I said it. This pandemic presents an opportunity for you to come out better than you were before, if you grab a hold to the opportunity. No one is going to do it for you. If anything, those graphs suggest is that they are not concerned with your well-being. The opportunities are there for you to earn because they've earned. But you have got to create. So I'm sorry for stepping on your soapbox, but
no, you're fine, because that goes back to my point. We have to be creators of jobs. And if you look back historically, because to get in that top 1%, look who is there. Look who is there. The top part of that 1% is entrepreneurs, CEOs, financial sector, technology sector. Mm-hmm. That's top 1%. The bottom of that 1% is highly paid wage earners. Here's the difference. You can be the best doctor in the world. With what healthcare is transformed to be now, it's all managed healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
The rates the doctors earn is negotiated by the insurance companies.
That's right.
That insurance company has a CEO. They have investors, entrepreneurs, CEOs, top 1% of that 1%. So the only way we change it is that we have to change our mindset. Forever, I grew up in a generation, Charles, you probably, we know this well. What were we trained to do? And they did the best they could, but we've got to look forward and change that. We were trained to go get an education
and go get a job, go work for someone.
In looking back, as I talk to my parents and I talk to baby boomers, they'll be the first to admit, we should have told you to go get an education and create jobs.
Right. Learn how to work inside of the stock market. Learn how to deal with financial instruments, because a lot of times that money is conjured out of thin air. You remember the movie The Big Short?
Yes.
And when we had the housing crisis back in 2008, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, all those collapsed.
Dude.
And you had a couple guys who were outliers who saw it coming, and they created engines to capitalize on those losses. So they shorted the system instead of going long. So they created that opportunity.
That's a smart move. But we have to change. Now, let me tell you another sector that's important that we kind of got away from. Skilled labor. So your plumbers, your electricians, we kind of went away from that. Now,
they're gonna be a part of the 1% in a minute if you don't watch it.
Say what now?
I said they're gonna ease into the 1%.
Yeah. And so what I want to take it a step further. But it's not enough to just be a great plumber, a great electrician anymore. I need you to understand systems and build a great electronic service, electricity service company, a great plumbing company. Again, creator of jobs, because if you just are a great plumber, then you just own your job. That's all. You just own your job. So you're limited to the amount of hours you can work, and you're trading hours for dollars. That's not going to build wealth. Not systemically, and it's not going to decrease the inequality gap. So we have to think differently. We have to be creators of jobs. So that means all of you with these skilled labor and build companies. Think bigger. Think bigger. Jim Collins has a book called what is Bold Commitment to I can't remember the name of it, but I know he has a saying that's being bold and audacious. I'll look up the title of that book. But yeah, it's a great book. But we have to do that. Now, there's going to be people that's going to knock at me and say, everybody's not built to own. I'm not saying everybody, but I'm saying those of you that are,
more
got to step up and take that charge, because then you've got to create the jobs for the ones that are not built to do that. They still need to have a place to work. Why is that important? So when we get in times like it's this, and I think I told you last week, what you're going to start seeing happen across this nation is that there's going to be a lot of reduction of workforce in the middle class, in the middle management part of corporate America. And what that means, let me make it clear. High 5-figure salaries, 6-figure salaries, they're coming for you.
One thing I want to add to that list, if it's all right, and this is just my brain thinking, is that there was a time when in the Black community especially, we circulated our money and we had those creation vehicles. You mentioned consumerism. We've got to get back to that consumerism being focused on circulation of money within our community, because we happen to be one of the, if not the largest group of consumers on the planet.
We consume 80% of all things consumed.
So the money is there. We're just giving it away.
But we only represent 11.3% of the population, but we consume 80% of all that's produced.
Yeah.
We gotta think differently.
Yeah, so we've got to, not only do we have to create, but once it's created, we have to circulate, support, and pay full price to our brothers and sisters.
So I'm glad you went there, because here's what I want to say. The hookup is not a hookup.
No, all that does is hurt Black business.
Right. And you ought to, in fact, we ought to flip that. You ought to want to hook the Black business person up. It ought to be different. You ought to want to hook each other up in a way economically that makes sense. Because we have to think in a way that we've never been challenged to think before, because we don't live in a society that all things are equal. I just showed you the data. 400 of the richest people make more than 150 million Americans.
Well, Liz,
400.
let me say this, and I'm not gonna give references today, but maybe we'll come back with some. But there was a time where, in our community especially, we were a part of the 1%.
Yes.
A long time ago, Reconstruction You know, there was a period where we circulated those dollars.
You know, here's a comment. I wanna put a couple of our comments and our listeners up. Got some good comments out here. Willie Mae says we're accustomed to consuming and not building. We miss opportunities to create jobs because number one, low self-esteem, and we tell ourselves this is all we know to do. Another one, yes, and he says my family never understood me not getting up and going 9 to 5 every day. Listen, my family still don't. And
I mean, those are both real statements, Liz. You know, we fight against that because some people have just, you know, they believe in the corporate identity. That means a lot. But you always say, do you want to go watch after 30 years or do you want to go?
You know, I take pride in the fact that I know and I carry a chip on my shoulder that I'm responsible for somebody else every day.
Yeah.
It's bigger than me. It's bigger than me. I'm responsible to you. You're responsible to me. We're responsible to our employees, our vendors. You know, it's bigger than me. And so I think, you know, probably, and look, I'm going to take the sole blame and say our generation. So Generation X, I'm going to call you out. We got to own a lot of this because we really became, and I know I was caught up in it probably right before the .com era. It really was just driven by me, you know, me. I got to get it. I got to do this. I got to do this. And all we thought about was me.
Yeah. And then too, so I think that's a fair criticism, but I also want you to consider this. Once we made it to the university, you know, the goal was to go and get that job. They recruited us just like we wanted to go to them.
Yeah.
They just had chess going on and we had checkers. So you know, what we're saying is now we have to change the playing board.
That's true. This is a good one. I want to get some of these comments that are pouring in, guys. Bear with me. I'm trying to get many as I can up here. Elise says community organizations that are geared to youth need to increase knowledge of the Black dollar as well as promote understanding of the stock market. I agree with that. And this is something that we do face, certainly in our community. Charles, I'll let you tackle this one.
I find it hard to circulate when they do not even show up. We need to challenge the Black business owners, customer service, and pride in their services. It's hard to excuse bad business because I'm Black also. What I would say to that, how many bad white businesses do you give a pass every day? I got to go to Walmart in about an hour. They have 30 checkouts. It's only going to be 2 of them open. But yet we give them a pass daily. And we go, we buy their groceries, we buy their clothes, we buy whatever they have to offer, and we give them a pass. I think you call out the lack of customer service, but you also do it with constructive criticism. And if they don't want to hear it, there's another Black business that will.
Good point. Here's another good comment here. Both my parents were successful business owners. There were highs and lows. There were high highs and low lows. But if my parents had been more financially literate, their wealth building could have benefited generations.
No doubt about it. One of the areas where there is an inequality gap is knowledge of the financial system. I know we learned how to save through, what was that thing, the Christmas Club at Citizens Bank?
Yep. That's how you got your anything under the tree.
Yeah. But while we were learning how to save that $25 a month, they were learning how to take that $25 and buy stock in Nike. So we have to expand our financial literacy Just like we talked about the social justice lens, some of the aches and pains that we have in our community are because we have grown dependent upon others. It's hard to break those dependencies.
Well, and let me say this too, in responding to one of the comments, we've always been great, skilled people in terms of, we made the burger better than anybody else. We cut the yard better than anybody else.
All right.
So we've always had the skill of excellence. Here's the shortcoming of that, but that's a short-sighted gift if it's not used right. So you can be great. We can be skilled and great at it, but what we've had a tendency to do, and if we're honest, I'm not going to even put it on you. I'll put it solely on me and just talk about my experience. Even my experience in corporate America, when I went to get that mentorship from someone that looked like me that had made it, they were not necessarily willing to share at times. Not all the times, but more times than not. So to be the most skilled person is not great because that's locking it into one person. So when that skill is not taught, it's not built upon, it's not expanded, so you only have the reach of one person. Whereas if you take that skill and you show 100 people how to be just as good at cutting the grass as you are, now you magnify that's expounded, and now how many people do you reach and how many lives do you change? We've got to get away from being this identity crisis of I'm known to be the greatest one at it, or I have this secret the way I do it. We've got to start functioning as a unit and not as individuals that are part of a unit. We have to.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to Willie Mae's statement a few minutes ago. Self-esteem, confidence issue. We invest a lot of money and time in getting to, degrees and such, but you have to be confident in knowing that if you share that information with someone that's in the same field as you, it'll come back. The universe will provide the comeback, but you will have just equipped someone that looks just like you with information they probably have never heard from anyone else. So we have to be smart. Sun Tzu in The Art of War always talks about opposites. If you want to win, then there are certain things that you have to do. If you want to fight, there are certain things that you have to do. I'm not going to tell you what those things are. Is that what we're talking about? You know what I'm saying?
I'm going to put this question up. We got a good question here. Charles, take that one.
For those of us that want to know more about stocks and trading, where do we start? Well, a good thing is to get together and, hey, Jackson Carter. Jackson Carter is joining us by FaceTime. Hey, what's going on, son? Start a stock club. Start at the very bottom.
Absolutely. And that's a good place. And then there are apps out there. Maybe we'll do a show one day and invite some special guests to talk about that do that and have stock clubs and investment clubs, and they can talk about their process of how to do that. I know, Charles, you participated in many of those. So maybe we'll have a show dedicated to that. I do want to bring up this one other thing here too, because there was a question. If you watch the movie Inequality for All, he did a quick survey where he asked the question, if you take an iPhone, because everybody thinks everything is, all the money goes to China, all the money goes. He said, where do you think the money goes when an iPhone is purchased, right? And so, or to make an iPhone, where does that money go? And so this is what people said that were in that class that took the survey, his class. They estimated 4% goes to Japan, 1% to Germany, 2% to South Korea, 70% of the money stays in the United States, and 23% of the money goes to China. That's what they said. That's what their guesses were.
Mm-hmm. What's the
reality of where that money goes?
Yeah.
34% goes to Japan, 17% goes to Germany, 13% goes to South Korea, only 6% of it stays in the US, 3.6% China, 27% other countries. Guys, we got to wake up. We got to wake up and really look deeper at this thing, because what they're saying, although if you watch, a lot of things are assembled in China, but when you manufacture, you pull in this part from this country, this part from this country, this part, it comes from a lot of different places, but where you'll find most often it don't stay or come from is the US. So in the case of an iPhone, when you buy an iPhone, that $1,000 iPhone, yeah, only 6% of that is going to stay in the US. And guess what? The 6% that stay in the US is going to the top 1%. None of it coming to you.
That's right.
Consumers of it.
And
So you got to look at that in terms of that way. So I just wanted to pull that up as somebody had mentioned it.
And Leslie, just to expand upon that, as technology becomes more and more prevalent, which that's right in your wheelhouse as far as how to efficiently and effectively incorporate technology. Follow the technology. Where are the incubators? The incubators are not in the United States. Those incubators, I think they did a survey. I have to find the link to it. They did a survey of companies asking them if they would move their locations away from Japan and China because of the COVID outbreak. And overwhelmingly, they said, no, indeed.
And why would they say no, Charles?
Well, if you're into technology, so let's just take phones, for instance. If you're trying to build a competitor to the iPhone, they have, so everybody's familiar with the flea market. You walk through the flea market, you look at different stalls for used items. Well, they have technology, the equivalent of a technology flea market, where you can walk through and find all of the latest and greatest parts that you need to help build that technology business. Whatever product it is that you're trying to put together, they have all of that under one roof. So think about that when you talk about creation. They are future-proofing. They are making sure that whatever is going to be built, there's a high likelihood it's going to be built over there. Now, I will say this. One of the areas where we excel as a people and as a country is in ideas. So we need to make sure that we are harnessing those ideas. Write them down. They may be manna from heaven. Write it down and then build on it, because you could take it and build it somewhere else. But America is now becoming, our stock and trade is in the idea itself.
Intellectual property.
That's right.
Get it trademarked. Look, guys, we can go on and on. I want to encourage you to watch the movie. It's on Netflix. It's called Inequality for All. If you haven't watched it, go back and watch this video. If you didn't catch the beginning, I played the trailer from it. It is an eye-opener, and it's something that, to be honest with you, that just drove Charles and I down the path that we're on now. Really, we've seen a lot. And I remember when we used to meet at that tree in the middle of Rankin Road that we would meet at halfway between each of our homes. And we always, since we were little boys, we always knew we would be in business. We'd be business owners. We didn't ever see having a job as the end of the road for us. It was always. Now, we've had in our mind all kinds of types of businesses we were going to own over the years. But that passion and understanding the importance of that, and that was the only way to be able to really leave an impact and to build a legacy where we could actually pass. Because the motivation for me is to be able to have the opportunity to pass the torch. And here's what I mean by that. I have one child, right? But I have many mentees. And so I want to be able to pass the torch. I can't pass the torch if I have nothing to pass.
That's right.
I can't make sure you have an internship opportunity if I don't have a vehicle to give you an internship opportunity. We've got to create the vehicles. And guys, horse and buggy still will get you from point A to point B. But you don't see anybody in horse and buggies around talking about they're going to town. Because Henry Ford made the automobile and that changed everything. Progress is going to happen. We have to adapt and we have to innovate. Bottom line. Let me see a couple more comments before we end. Charles, take that one for me.
2 weeks ago, I decided to not go back to school to get an RN degree. Been an LPN for 26 years and now earn the base salary of an RN. Instead, I decided to invest in an asset that would catapult my finances into orbit. Not only can I secure my household, but others as well. It will create jobs for others. It may take 6 months to a year, but worth it. Ooh, Leslie, you probably should have taken that one because basically what she's laying out is the success rate for businesses.
Mm-hmm.
The first 5 years is usually, either the kiss of success or the kiss of death. And she's also tackling whether or not to seek another degree when she already has a well-established skill set. And that goes to creation, taking the knowledge that you have and creating something broader. So it's a vehicle for not only your household, but generational wealth.
Well, you know what? And I hear you. Well, I mean, I made a similar decision after talking with Charles and talking through it a few months back myself, for that very reason of where can I best position myself for assets and for wealth creation in that realm of getting to entrepreneur and that top 1%. So there's only one path to the top 1%, guys. And so it doesn't matter if you're skilled labor, if you're professional labor, if you're using intellectual property, you still got to cross over from a doer to a builder of systems to scale.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't scale, you just own a job.
That's right. That's right.
And people get upset with me all the time, but mark my word, here's what I'm saying. If Charles and I, and I hadn't talked to him about this, but I'm sure he's going to echo this and agree 100%. If he doesn't, he will say it, because anybody that knows us know that we don't just say yes. So we'll go ahead at time to time to get the best answer out of both of us. But here's the thing. If urban law is in the exact same position in 5 years that it is in today, then Charles and I have failed.
Oh, yes, sir.
We have absolutely failed. That's not, if our vision, now that's bad. This is worse. If our vision of urban law is to be in 5 years just a little more than what it is today, then that's insanity.
Yeah. Yeah. Your visions, when you are looking to become a creator, they should be a little bit scary and a lot crazy, because the only way you are going to break out of the known is to dive off and challenge the unknown.
Well, we've been doing that for a long time, my brother, and I know we went a little long today, guys. Definitely go back, review the video, watch the movie on Netflix, Inequality for All. Read, you can go, he even has a site, you can download everything I've shown you here, you can access free. Just dig into it and really just start to think about how you spend your resources, where you spend them. And Charles brought up a good example. We give do-overs to other businesses that do bad business all the time. Unfortunately, when it's a black business to mess up, we want to give them one shot and they're out. Even in baseball, you get 3 strikes. Even in basketball, you got 4 quarters or 2 halves. Even in football, you got 60 minutes. But we want to give each other one shot. So the question is that realistic? Because I'm sure all of us, our parents have had to give us more than one shot to learn something or to do something right. So we got to think a little bit differently. We got to have a little bit more compassion toward each other, and then encourage and promote and teach, and then set the expectation. There's nothing wrong with saying, look, I want to do business with you, but these are the expectations that I need you to meet.
That's right.
Hold us accountable. And with that, we will see you next week. Next week, we're going to have special guests. Some of our clients are going to be on talking about Africa and doing business in Africa and the love that they have for Africa. And they've traveled there several times. So they're going to be talking about some of the initiatives they're pushing. So I'm looking forward to having them on, Charles and I, and talking with them. And they're an example of just taking that action and doing things, and not just hoping, not just letting those dreams wash away. So I'm looking forward to them sharing with us next week. So again, I'll see you next time. Charles, you got any last words?
No, everybody enjoy. Just remember what I said about the why and the how.
Well, you've heard it. I've heard it. Now it's time for us all to do it. See you next time.
Leslie and I have known each other since early childhood. We grew up on the same country road in Mississippi.
I think why we're good for the community of Mississippi is because we're a product of this community. We are just two country guys, and we were embedded with what I call the diamonds of good character.
Come, join the family, and help us build the community.